Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. How did it happen? How did it all come to be? The Varsity Blues college admissions scandal with high-profile actresses like Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman caught up into it, along with their husbands, including Lori Loughlin's husband, but William H. Macy not implicated. Felicity Huffman's.
She did it on her own.
She must have been freelancing, yeah.
Honey, I got this, she said.
Well, who knows how these Hollywood couples operate, really. But also, captains of industry, big-time financiers and the like, rich people on the West Coast who needed to conjure up academic and extracurricular records for their kids so they could get into USC? What?
You guys always,
Okay.
Ivy League schools and USC. It's like why do you have to pay somebody to get into USC? You should be able to get into USC on your own.
And you should be able to get into everywhere else on your own or not get into it.
Exactly.
Maybe there should be a conversation with these parents and kids about the difference between how you go to school versus where you go to school. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Jennifer Levitz. She's a national reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and she's the co-author of the just-released book, Unacceptable: Privilege, Deceit, and the Making of the College Admissions Scandal. Jennifer, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with the mastermind, such as he is, of this scandal, Rick Singer. Give us a profile on this guy and how he was able to enlist so many of these people, otherwise ostensibly sophisticated people, to do idiotic things like conjure up a water polo record for their kid.
So Rick Singer was an extraordinarily competitive man who became a college counselor, and he was actually quite good, legitimately, and his name was passed around, and he worked with a lot of high-profile people. But what he figured out was he was a former coach, basketball coach. And along the way, he figured out the incredible advantage that even just a walk-on athlete can have in the admissions process. And he also knew that coaches in these lower-level sports don't always get the oversight that other sports do, and that they have to raise money for the programs. They don't really like that they aren't as well paid as some of the more high-profile sports. So he put all this together, and he figured he could just go to them and say, look, I can help you with that fundraising requirement. I can get you $200,000 or $50,000, and it would give a little to you sometimes too. And we can, if you just kind of mark this kid down as being on your water polo team, and, you don't even have to deal with the parent because the kid's not going to play. And so that's what he did. And so he was able to sell this to parents as a guarantee. Whereas, sure, you can donate a lot of money as for a building or something, but, that's a lot more money, not necessarily a guarantee. Or you can do it this way, which I call the side door. So you can imagine this was very attractive to some people who their mindset on a very select certain schools, and also just this headache of the process. He's going to take that away from you and just get this thing done.
So would the college coaches be paid off?
It varied. So some of the coaches put the money toward the program. Actually, most of them did also get some money for themselves. I think only one just put it all towards the program. But yeah, at some point he'd say, and you deserve a little too, because you're not that well paid compared to the basketball coach.
And so it's interesting, the idea that they would be a college, a phony baloney like college polo player, soccer player, what have you. Well, why not just, not that I'm advocating this, but if you're going to commit fraud, why not just conjure up a high school record that suggests that this person was very active, that may be a difference maker, and where admissions officers inundated with applications are unlikely to probably do the sort of follow-up to ensure that Susie Q was on the polo team and the soccer team and the softball team and the like?
Well, because of the way that the sports admissions works is that the coaches get a certain number of, golden
slots,
tickets, basically,
yeah, right.
And so you're almost in a different pile. So you go to the coaches, and then the coaches say, I've got these kids. These are the kids I want. And then in some cases it was like that was pretty much the admissions office would just look to then make sure they'd met basic standards.
And refresh our recollection of how this all unraveled.
It was quite interesting. It all started with an investigation into a stock fraud case by a gentleman out in LA, completely unrelated, and he came in to cooperate with investigators, and they were looking at flipping him and making him a government's witness. But in doing that, you have to know what everybody's warts are, everything you've ever done, so that the defense doesn't try to discredit your witness. So they're looking at his bank records and see some money moving between him and Connecticut. And, he comes out and he says, yeah, I've been bribing the coach of Yale to get my daughter in. And they, the investigators, I think it was ding, 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 like, what's going on? This is really interesting. So they flipped him, and then they get him to help bring in the Yale coach. They flip the Yale coach, and then that's what leads them to Rick Singer. And then they listen in on Rick Singer for a long time. They flip Rick Singer, and then he turns over his Rolodex.
Oh my gosh.
Do you find it interesting that none of the kids raised a red flag? The kids that are on these teams that get the golden tickets, you were saying, and they realize that there's some people that are part of the team that got a golden ticket that have no business being here. They can't, play the sport, certainly not at the collegiate level.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you say the question one more time?
I was saying, are you surprised that none of the kids beefed? The kids that are on these teams that got the golden tickets legitimately because they can play at the collegiate level, and they see other kids on the team that clearly cannot play at the collegiate level, and that didn't raise any suspicions.
Well, yeah, you raised a great question, which is, what did they do with the kids? So that was part of his scheme, is that the kid never had to play. In these lower level sports, where you had like crew and water polo, they have pretty big teams. So they would label them as walk-ons, but the kid didn't have to go to practice. They, for the most part, they just never showed up. And so the coaches, were in on that, and so they weren't going to say anything. So
I know,
but didn't some of the kids? I mean, they took fake water polo photo shoots in their family's backyard. Didn't some of them know what was going on, or there's some that really didn't know what was going on?
I think it was a real mix. There was some kids who were brought in on it, and as you mentioned, had to do something to make it happen, like forward emails or forward essays they didn't write, or pose on stuff. And so certainly they knew in some way. Other kids were in the dark. The parents really didn't want them to know. Like, there was a case of a kid who was presented as a track athlete to a pole vaulter to USC, and this all happened without his knowledge. And then he got to USC and he went in for orientation, and somebody sat down and said, advisor said, oh, I see you're on the track team. And he said, no, I'm not. And he said, oh, well, you are. And he went to his mom and he said, Mom, they think I'm on the track team. What's going on? And then she had to call Rick Singer, and he had to fix this. And so sometimes the kids were actually, blowing it for the
Yeah, it is. No, that's interesting. The differences there, but just going back to the kids, they talk, and particularly in competition, and it's still interesting to me. I know this a little bit from basketball. I mean, if you have less people on your practice squad than another team does, you talk about the things, you talk about how your team operates with the coaches, the other players, and so on and so forth. You don't, nobody finds it curious that their team has less people actually suiting up, even for practice, to be on the practice squad, than say one of their conference competitors and stuff. That seems to me still there. So there could have been red flags raised there, and again, I understand that you don't want to cross swords with the coach and this and that, but it still seems like something that would have obviously been seen by somebody as a skew.
Yeah, there was a number of cases, so you'd have basically it would be one or two. It wasn't like five members of your practice squad. So it'd be like one kid. So I don't know if it stuck out hugely, but there were certain people that raised concerns about this along the way. And one of the things that perpetuated the fraud was that they would then get people involved to actually look into it. What's going on, and he was just able to continually bat down suspicion. And the people that really raised the concerns were the guidance counselors at the schools, because at some point the colleges, they would talk with the colleges and they'd say, "Oh, we're looking at so and so, and we understand, she plays tennis," and the coach would say, the guidance counselor would say, "No, they don't. I know what all
right.
this play.
Right.
It's possible."
Well, what about the cases where somebody came in and changed their SAT or ACT scores?
That was
That's
that
a
was
big
a
deal.
big that was right. That was a big part of his scam. And what he did there, so you know how kids go to a high school on a Saturday and take their SAT or their ACT. So he figured out that he could basically run like two of these sites. So he picked one in West Hollywood and a high school in Houston, and he paid off the administrators who were running it on these particular Saturdays. So that enabled him to get the kids there and his corrupt proctor in there. And he also had to get the kid into a special room, some sort of special circumstance. And so he would help the parents get the kid labeled as learning disabled. So some of them did have issues, but sometimes he would just have them go to a psychologist that he had under his employ. So it was a complicated scam. And then you do that, and then you fly the kids to one of these sites, and then his proctor would come in. He had a guy who he used, who was just brilliant, who had gone to Harvard and was a test-taking whiz, and could not only get a perfect score, but could get just the right score. It couldn't be too high. It had to be, commensurate in some cases with the kids, so it didn't stand out too much. And so he knew exactly how many to get wrong. So the kids would go in, and they would say, look, take the test, but we're going to have you take it on this separate sheet because of make up some excuse. And then this guy would come in after and just
Fill out all the right
correct
answers.
it. And then, and in some cases, those kids did know there were cases where he was right there in the room with them.
She is Jennifer Levitz, national reporter for the Wall Street Journal, co-author of the just-released book, Unacceptable, Privileged Deceit in the Making of the College Admissions Scandal. Jennifer, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Her next book should be Selective Enrollment at CPS. Jennifer joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
I'm Mick McDonald, co-founder of Configure One, a global leader in configure, price, and quote software for manufacturers, and a new customer of Signature Bank. Configure One recently came to Signature Bank for a loan under the Paycheck Protection Program after our previous business bank of 20 years left us out in the cold. When I called Signature, I worked directly with one of the founders of the bank, who assured me that my application would be submitted immediately. 1 week later, my loan was approved and funded, and I moved my entire banking relationship to Signature. Signature Bank is incredibly responsive, fully transparent, and a great partner for my business.
Signature Bank is looking for their next success story. To learn more about turning your business vision into reality, visit signaturebank.bank. Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Do it every day because I don't eat enough fruits and veggies on my own, and that is taking Balance of Nature. 10 servings of 31 different fruits and veggies. I'm